Hello, viewers. Welcome to this edition of Wellness. My name is Dr. Victoria Mwebe Katasi, a health and wellness expert and a specialist treating children with brain and spine cancers. With me on this edition is Regina Nantege, who is a dietitian and nutritionist. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you very much.
Could you please tell us a bit more about yourself?
I love food. That's one. I am a clinical nutritionist, but also I do private client management as a personal dietitian with the Impact Nutrition Company. We do this virtually through our digital platform, the Leah Dietitian app. We typically help people lose weight, about a kilo a week. We help diabetics better manage their sugar levels with diet therapy and a number of diet-related conditions. So children, adults, sports people, just making sure that individuals are able to have the ideal diets for their individual health goals and wellness goals.
All right. Thank you very much, Regina, for that. Have you ever heard about childhood obesity? Did you even know that children can become obese? Let us delve further into this topic as we hear from the expert herself. So, Regina, please tell us a bit more about childhood obesity. What does it mean in simple terms or lay terms for someone who is non-medical when we talk about childhood obesity?
The simplest way to talk about child obesity is your child is gaining more fat than they would have to have. Now, the layperson will typically look at a child and say, oh, the child is a bit chubby, gaining more weight. At the start, especially in African context, it's looked at as a good thing because the child is big. That means my family has adequate food for this child. But where do we see it's a danger sign? It won't be just the eye. When you take your child to the health facility, typically you will have this child measured, weight and height. I believe this is a standard procedure for all medical procedures.
Indeed.
You have to know the child's height. We also have to know the weight. They will quantify and look at the weight for the child's height, the weight for the child's height, and see whether this child has the right weight for height. If the child has excess weight for their height or for their age, for example, you have a 5-year-old who is, for example, 50 kilos,
Okay,
definitely they are over their ideal weight. So it's a very clear-cut number, and every single parent out there can get this number done. As long as you go to the health facility, they will plot. If your child is below 5 years, they will even plot on the child health card, and you'll see that your child is going above the range. Then for those above 5 years, we'll be able to see this using what we call BMI, a comparison of your weight with your height. So while I encourage people to use their eyes to look out for which child is overweight, I don't want you to go around saying you're overweight, you're fat. No, because you could be wrong with your eye, but the numbers will not lie.
Okay, so like we have heard it, you telling that somebody or a child has obesity really has to do with measuring this child's weight vis-a-vis their height and their age. And for those under 5 years, we are actually plotting it on a growth health chart. And above 5 years, we are using the body mass index or the BMI. So what are some of the causes of childhood obesity that you have come across in our society to date?
Wow. I'll start with the one that has the least percentage I'll start with the one that is the least possible likelihood.
Okay.
The least likelihood is a disease. For example, a child could be born with a medical condition that's making their metabolic rate so low, or making them abnormally deposit fat, and that's rare. Then we have the second that could rank second to the rare is genetically. Genetically, someone could be predisposed to being more overweight than other people. There are studies that show that mothers who are obese may most likely have children who are also obese if the mother was obese during the pregnancy. So it's possible that there's a genetic predisposition where the genetics are aligned because this child was fetus in the mother's womb, while the mother was overweight and obese. So the child is more likely to be overweight and obese. But those two, disease and genetics and hormonal imbalances, like your body is not really handling your systems well. For me, in my mind, and I believe statistically too, are the rare situations. What is more common and what is controllable and modifiable is the diet and physical activity, what we call the lifestyle causes. So lifestyle covers sleep, exercise, diet. Children who are eating diets that are more high in sugars, higher in fat, are definitely going to have more excess body weight. and think about it as the environment of the food around them. What are you providing to these children? Number 2 is exercise. Children who are typically going to have most of their playtime playing video games, which requires them to sit, as compared to playing outside, would definitely have more overweight and obesity. And then, of course, sleep. There's evidence that individuals, not even just the children, even adults, if you oversleep, you are more predisposed to being overweight and obese, and also when you undersleep. So a safe range of sleep hours is important.
Okay. So when you're talking about some of those factors, you reminded me. And of course, being from a medical perspective, I like to read up about some of these things from time to time. There is a documentary that I've come across which looked at two twins who had been born to the same parents. They were identical twins. And so they grew up in the same environment. So basically, they are being exposed to the same lifestyle. However, on growing up, these twins then each went to live their own life. Okay, so now one moved in a different state and one was in a different state. And so they now had different, lifestyles, the feeding, the exercise, the activity. And it was found that one of these twins was obese, vis-a-vis the other one wasn't obese. So now what we are looking at is genetics vis-a-vis environment.
Yes.
Their genetics are the same, okay? But now their environment. In your opinion, on this view and on a scientific view, what do you think of these two? What holds more water for somebody to actually end up being obese, their genetics and their environment?
It will be the environment more, because just like the case study of the twin study, I think it's called the twin study, it shows clearly that twins that are identical have the same genetic makeup. That's why they even look identical to us as individuals. So if these individuals who are genetically identical then are exposed to different food environments, one eating food that is higher in energy, that means their body is thinking, okay, you're giving me much more than I need, so I definitely have to store some as excess body fat. Because that's how obesity happens, that you're giving an excess of energy. The body is thinking, what do I do with it? Then it stores the excess energy as body fat. So it's very clear that when we put genetics and food environment together, food environment is superior to genetics. Because when the genetics, even if the genetics predisposed someone to gain weight, you still have to have the raw material. The genetics are a predisposing factor. The diet provides the capacity to gain the weight. I love to use the scenario of, we have two basins, they can both collect water under the rain. But if I don't put one of the basins outside, they will not collect water. So let's imagine both people are genetically predisposed to gain weight, but if I do not provide the situation, the food, the raw material to actually build the fat stores in the body, then I will not actually have the weight gain happening. So for me, I tell children, adolescents, parents, even when your child has a genetic predisposition, for example, we clearly know that there are families and regions. For example, in Uganda, just looking at our country, Uganda, you can look at the different tribes and see how we have different genetic predispositions to how we store our fat. Not necessarily the obesity per se, but fat storage as an example of genetics. We know that children from certain regions will store more fat around their hips, as children from certain regions will store more fat around their abdomen. And also have people whereby most of them in their families, a colleague was telling me, in my family, when we get fat, it's the hands and the neck. There's a lot of people who are fat in that way. Well, other people, it's almost all deposited around their hips and legs. We all know that in Uganda, we can clearly see the genetic predispositions on how we deposit fat. And that's just on depositing of the fat. Where is the fat going? That means we have no control of where the fat goes.
That's true.
But if we go ahead and say, let's make sure that these children, are not getting excess fat, so they will not actually deposit excess fat anywhere, because they don't have the actual fat to store, because the diet has been created in such a way that they don't have what to store.
Yeah. So basically what we are saying is the environment is playing a bigger role, because you can control the environment.
Yes.
You cannot control your genetics, but you can control how you're using your environment, the food that you take in, the fact that you are more active rather than being sedentary.
Very, very true. Okay. And also from a medical standpoint, and you could elaborate on that, how many times have you actually met a child with a hormonal problem that's causing them to have excess weight? How many times have you found a child? I'm not saying to the parents who have children with these conditions, for example, let's say someone has low thyroid hormones, and that means their metabolic rate is so low, they're predisposed to being overweight.
That's true.
But clinically speaking, without statistic numbers, how many times a month do you meet a child with a genetic problem? And when you do, you actually have a medical solution for it. You give them a hormone replacement.
Yeah.
You fix it on a medical standpoint.
That's true.
Yeah.
And maybe talking a bit more about children like this who have hormonal imbalances. So, like I had earlier said, I work with children who have brain tumors. And so, one of the biggest things that I see in my clinic problems is actually excessive weight. Because a number of children in my clinic have a particular tumor called a craniopharyngioma, and it grows in the area where you have the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. And this is really where you're having the production of hormones that control the production of cortisol in the body, things like mineralocorticoids. And so in the long run, because these children are having excessive cortisol production, okay, or sometimes they get into hypocortisolism, they end up with obesity, okay? And for me, this has been one of the biggest issues that I have had in managing these children, because yes, I put them on hormonal therapy. They are on thyroxine, they are on hydrocortisone. But every time I try to speak to the parents about diet, exercise, the only way you can control this weight is make sure your child is very active. Please control the diet. People look at me as if what I am speaking is not something that is going to work. Please elaborate a bit more on how can we help this, especially in the setting. I'm looking at children who are not coming from very well-to-do families. Some are, but some are not. So how do we teach the ordinary Ugandan who is only able to afford a diet of I have yams, cassava, potatoes? As you realize, the diet here in Uganda is basically carbohydrate-based, okay? So how do we help this parent to help their child to be able to cut this weight and also prevent the excessive weight, because they already have a predisposing factor, the hormonal imbalance that they have?
Yeah. That really brings in a concept of childhood obesity that means we need to approach this with empathy. I just want to mention even before I go into how, because I think very many times it's easy for us to just look at the parent and say, your child is obese, it's your fault. I feel like that draws in the empathy point of you don't know what's actually happening to this child, you don't know what's going on, and I'm doing something about it medically. So I think it reminds all the viewers about being empathetic. Do not call children fat, do not fat shame children. You don't know what's going on. You really don't know what's going on. And yes, food plays a role. And in this case, the parent has a responsibility to take, but we approach it from an empathetic point. I'm now speaking to the health workers as well. You want to approach it from an empathy point and also understand that the parent, and to the parents, you will somehow be on a defensive most of the time. So the defensive is usually because you think, since you're speaking about food and I'm one who feeds my child, maybe you're thinking I'm a bad parent. No, we're not saying you're a bad parent. We're just saying, we understand your busy schedule. We understand our food in Uganda is typically going to be predisposing to obesity. We're just saying, hey, look here, we get you. Let's have a conversation about how we can make changes. It's not that you're a bad parent. It's just that we have to be more careful now that the child is overweight. So what that looks like for me is I sit down with the parent. I ask them, what foods does this child like? I love to start from a point of what the child likes, because it's important for us to not think I will throw in a set of rules and the child will obviously follow. I need to understand, what does the child like? So the parent will tell you they like this, they like this. Then also, what does the child commonly eat in addition to what they like?
What can you afford?
What can you afford? Affordability, feasibility. Feasibility in the sense of the child may like baked chicken, but you don't have an oven. So you only eat it once in a while. So we are looking into what is currently happening. So the parent has to be willing to share deeply and openly. Like, do not tell lies. Tell me your child likes ice cream. Tell me your child loves corn snacks. Tell me everything your child likes. Also, tell me about the fact that you're very busy, so you don't have time to make, let's say, natural fruit juice, so you're buying sweetened drinks. Tell me honestly. Tell me honestly, deeply about these changes that these approaches that you're using. Now, from that point of I have the knowledge of what you're doing, I'll go in and look at what is creating the largest amount of energy coming in. For example, I will look at a child, and if I want to make just small changes, you realize, let's imagine we have a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old will pretty much use about 1,500 calories. And let's back it up a bit and understand what calories are. Calories is energy. The amount of energy we use in a day is, and we measure it in calories, like how we would measure distance in kilometers. So calories is how we measure the energy. So it means that everything we are doing with managing of obesity is counting energy. So we now understand that, okay, this 5-year-old uses about 1,500 calories. For me to get this 5-year-old, maybe also attending your clinic to lose weight, I need to help them eat slightly less than 1,500. So let's give this 5-year-old a name, let's say X. So baby X, there's a baby X in real life. Yeah, baby X, for example, needs to use just 1,500 calories. And they need 1,500 calories every day, but I need them to eat less than 1,500 so that their bodies are like, wow, you're not giving me enough. Then it will use their excess fat stores as a source of energy that day. So I'm literally depriving this child of some of the energy they need in a day. When I do this depriving, for example, I'll say I want to deprive, let's say 500, so that if I deprive 500 every day, in a month, this child will lose 2 kilos.
Okay.
And those are the numbers the dietitian will work out. But practically speaking to the parent, what that would look like is, now I know what you're already providing as food. I'll go in and say, okay, you are providing our child, let's say, a pack of, there are these corn snacks on market, deep fried corn snacks. Usually even sold with a soda on the side. In the supermarkets, we won't mention the brand names. There's a corn snack and a soda. So it's usually the after school snack parents will give with ease. And I'll say, okay, look here, that after school snack you're providing is providing 500 calories. If I remove it, just that change alone will actually help this child lose 2 kilos every month. So I'm not even asking the parent for so much.
Modify so much of the
Yes.
diet.
And then the parent will say, okay, but my child really loves to snack after school. And I'll say, look here, your child loves to snack after school because you built a habit around after school we snack before dinner. What about we build a habit of when they come home, they play outside or they go swimming and wait for dinner. So most of the time, the changes are not even that big for children, because for children, obesity management, we don't want to also be so hard on them. At most, want to actually lose just 2 kilos a month. So the changes are small. And most of the time, the foods that have the biggest amount of calories are not even so many. For example, I'll give an example of the donuts. Typical donuts we buy in Uganda for 500 shillings.
Okay. The ones that they make on the road?
There's one they make the bakery ones, the ones on the road, pretty much mandazi and donuts or rindazi. Typically, the amount of calories they have are the same because they're both wheat products, they're both dipped in oil. Now, that's a very easy to have snack. But one donut, one chindazi, is about 250 calories.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So just telling this parent, you've been giving your child 2 mandazi every day, remove them. That child may be able to lose 2 kilos a month. You've been giving your child a liter without even intentionally doing it. For example, I tell parents, do a checklist. If you can answer yes to this question, then there is a problem in your household. Ask the parent, can your child take plain water? Can your child take juice without added sugar? And the parent will say no. That's a danger sign, because it means that this child cannot hydrate without something sweet. So it means all through the day, on a hot day, this child is going to take a glass of sweetened juice, a bottle of soda, another glass of something sweetened. Before you know it, they have taken in over a liter of sweetened juice. So just that change alone of saying, can you teach your child to take water? Hand them a bottle of water instead of a bottle of soda. That change alone, it's going to be hard on the child, of course, because their taste buds are now used to something sweet, but that change alone can actually make a big difference. Then definitely, beyond the snacks, hydration, we're now going into the actual meal. You've told me what your child loves to eat, and I clearly see what you easily cook as well. For example, working mothers, you're busy. and it's totally understandable. So conveniently, a working mother will go home, and if they're really tired, for example, a public holiday, and they'll also see it as a treat, they will say, instead of eating dinner, let us eat chips.
Oh, let us order out pizza.
Yes, order out or a plate of chips. But you see, these are things that are dipped in oil. I'm not saying children shouldn't eat them. Actually, children should eat these things. You just have to teach them how to moderate. So instead of having a whole plate of chips for this child, you want to say, let's say quarter of the plate chips, then you have a piece of chicken, and then you also have vegetables on the side. So we are not saying do not give your child chips. You're saying give them just a quarter plate chips, 2 pieces of chicken, and then you have lots of vegetables. Still the same full plate of food for your child, but not filled with only the energy food. So it's really modifications, because you also don't want this child to feel like they are being restricted because food is a social thing. Food is how we sometimes show love. Food is a family thing. They're seeing daddy's eating a whole plate of chips. For them, they're eating half plate. So it can be like you're segregating. Exactly. And I think when we bring in the dad situation and any other person in the home, it's just a situation of what is the behavior of everyone in the home. For example, one of us here could have a child and you want them to lose weight, but as your child is drinking water, you're drinking soda.
Indeed.
As your child is being told to eat a banana, you're eating mandas. As your child is in their presence, and you're enjoying so much, and you're looking at their plate like, like what has your mother given you? We have to be in a situation where we eat healthy and it's normal. This business of thinking healthy is for the sick, it gets into the child's brain. Even as adults, later on in life, you give an adult vegetables and they're like, vegetables are for sick people.
Oh, I should actually tell you what my colleagues like to say. When you tell them to eat vegetables, you have a plate, they say, I'm not a goat.
Exactly. And parents are saying these things in front of their children. So if, for example, the case you shared of a child who has a hormonal issue and they are gaining weight, but the parents at home think you're telling them to give this child vegetables because they're sick. Yet what you're saying is we all need vegetables as a population, as a family. So I think what I've seen work most for children, and if I can just visualize some of the cases I have won at making sure that the child is losing 2 kilos every month consistently until they're at their ideal weight. This mother, and I'm visualizing a particular mother in my mind, she changed the whole entire family's eating. She went home after I had a session with her about the son, bought healthy plates, where she had a plate that is portioned with vegetable portion, those colorful plates with portions, went home and said, no more using the other plates. We are all going to use these plates that have portions. Instructed the house manager to serve food to everyone in the household in that way. And when I met the father somewhere, he said, it's very exciting how my household now all eats differently. And guess what he did for this young boy who was trying to lose weight is he felt like everyone in the household was just a healthy eater. It wasn't just him being asked to eat a special way.
So he had the support of everyone else.
Everyone. And then for those who are not trying to lose weight, maybe they were accepted to have an additional snack so that they don't lose weight because his was a bit lower energy. But at the end of the day, this young man lost weight, and he's a swimmer. I remember the mother telling me, oh, Yosifen swims better. And we built systems around this child that showed that it's not just about weight loss. We are trying to make you fit. I remember I would say, when you become smaller, you'll be able to jump 100 times. Are you sure? When you become smaller, you'll concentrate more in class. So you have to put in non-weight related incentives for this child. No child wants to be told you're eating this way because you're big.
So that it doesn't even appear like it's a burden.
It doesn't. The moment you label it you're big, it's going to end badly. Because I also have families where they have said, one even suggested having a special house manager just for that child to eat healthy. And definitely we failed.
Yeah.
The child is rebellious. I was told the child was trying to hide and eat certain things. So the child would buy snacks at school and come with them in their bag and eat them in the bedroom. So you come serve him the food, he eats it, but in the bedroom he's hiding and eating certain things. And this was an adolescent because, of course, for them, they are more willing to rebel.
Yeah.
So my point here is we can't talk about the healthy diet and everything, but if the people in the household are not willing to change their habits, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, especially for adolescents. You will give them vegetable salad and they will get oil and add to the vegetable salad to make it more tasty. It's You have to support them beyond calling them fat. You have to support them to a level where they understand it's not about the body size, it's about your health in future and your productivity. But also, I feel for the girls, the adolescent girls, it's very important for us to know that they will have more body shaming than the boys.
That's true.
Because I have spoken to girls and it's actually sad. And I think it should motivate the parents to do something about their children's weight before they get to adolescence. You'll find a teenage girl, probably 12-year-old, who has a very large waist circumference because of fat. And the uniforms are in such a way that they have a band around the waist.
Yeah, and you have
most
to
of
tuck
them,
in,
and you have to tuck in. So this child, every time they tuck in, their tummy falls over. And when you sit down with them, you ask them, why do you want to lose weight? I really look ugly in my uniform. As a female yourself, you know that's a very bad place for a young girl to be, where she has low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because then she feels insecure. It's very easy for people to take advantage of her because now such a girl who says, I really look ugly in my uniform. And going off topic from obesity, the first young man to tell her you look beautiful, she'll be like, what? I'm actually beautiful? Like, I didn't know.
And she can do whatever he
She
wants.
can do whatever he wants. So for me, to parents, I think when we tell them about making their children have a healthy weight, they don't look at the consequences.
Yeah.
But just think about a young girl who feels insecure about herself. Even the boys. Because and children are nice, sweet souls, but children can also be very bad. Children call each other names.
Yeah, I mean, there's bullying that happens in schools at whatever age. So
Yes, you will hear big boys, the boys who have diagnosed with obesity, and you hear them rebel losing weight.
Yeah.
But when you deeply understand the why, they've been in school for about 4 years, or let's say they are O level, and everyone is calling them big boy, and now they've built a shell around it of I am the big boy, and they usually even love the name, they love the title. So it comes from shaming to, okay, let me own it, I'm a big boy.
Yeah.
It becomes an identity. And you really feel like if this young man had not become overweight before he starts his adolescence, he would have been saved. Because now he's building an identity around it to show his stuff. You call me big, I say I'm big.
Yeah. Okay, so and from what I am understanding, that first of all, if we are going to help these children, it's going to have to be a team effort. And team effort means whoever we are living with. It's our environment that we are modifying. It's the entire family. It's not just the one child to be the focus, but it's going to be the focus of the entire family. What do we all eat? What actually, for me, I like to say it starts from the point of shopping. What do you as a parent shop? What is kept in the pantry in your house? Because every time I feel hungry, every time a child feels hungry, they'll just go and check in the fridge or the pantry and pick up what is there. If what you stock is apples and oranges, it's basically what they'll eat. Yeah. If you are stocking chocolate, I don't know, and all kinds of snacks, it's what they'll eat.
People have crates of sodas in their houses.
Imagine.
Like, I'm always in but also thinking, really?
Why?
Like, really? Like, the same energy you used to stock crates of soda is the same energy you can use to stock pineapples. The same energy you used to tell your children to do their homework is the same energy you can tell them squeeze those lemons as part of your housework, cut up those pineapples. What you expose your children to is what they get to. So I really think that any parent who is listening to this and shopping behavior, you're going home with a bucket, those small buckets, I call them buckets of biscuits. Why? Like, let it be something you give once in a while. Why are you bulk shopping things that are not necessary? You
Yeah.
do not bulk shop oranges, but you're bulk shopping a box of candies. People are buying sacks of the corn snacks.
And putting them in their houses?
Yes, like
Wow.
you're 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 breeding something you will not be able to manage,
That's
because
true.
ultimately childhood obesity even predisposes these children to earlier onset of conditions like diabetes, hypertension. And there is literature that shows that a person who is overweight and obese in their childhood, for example, for ladies, is more likely to have breast cancer in their adult years. Lots of literature.
Yeah, not just breast. I think even a higher risk of things like colonic cancer as well. Okay. And this cuts across for both populations, the men and the women.
Yes, so you're literally breeding an expense for yourself, because if you're 21-year-old in the early adulthood gets these conditions,
Yeah.
it's still on you as a parent to meet these costs and the emotional burden as well of caring for a sick child. I have seen children 15, 16 years with high blood pressure. I'm not saying those who are small don't get it, but it's commonly the ones who are overweight and obese. So
Yeah.
the consequences of your shopping habits are so big if you just actually sit down and internalize them, from a stretch of the emotional damage you're having on these young children, especially who are in their puberty,
Yeah.
to the consequence of ultimately their adult years. And if I can tell parents, most of the 21-year-olds I work on, like 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
after they have gone past the childhood phase and they are now trying to work on their excess weight as adults, and they say, I was overweight as a child. I I feel each of them is resentful of their parent. Like they resent that they hate the fact that their parents did not do anything. Like they actually, dear parents, your children are very bitter.
Yeah. They hate the fact that all we ever did was eat KFC. When we go
Yes,
out, they take us to do ice cream, you know?
they are very
Yeah.
bitter. In the moment, you're loving on them.
That's what you think anyway.
But me who has met young adults who are overweight and obese as children, struggling to fix themselves, they hate what they went through as children. One particularly said, I feel like my mother put me at this weight. Like she vividly remembers even her younger self being added more portions of food
Yeah.
because she wanted it, or because she was already overweight, so the mother would actually like keep extra for her and add her extra. Like we're giving one scoop of ice cream to everyone, my girl is getting two.
So she didn't teach her the discipline of being able to say, no, this is when I need to
Nah.
stop and I can keep away from this. For I don't have to have this when I want it, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
she had to go through childhood, and then when she was independent, around 21, when she was at university, she came and booked an appointment with a dietitian. And I remember that first session was really about her saying, I'm choosing to take responsibility, but I don't even know
Yeah.
if I can fix what damage was done. I
Yeah.
wish those people had actually taken charge. But when you talk to parents right now, they're looking at you like, you're blaming me. But I'm just telling you, the only person who can take charge is you.
And I guess that really brings an important point that you've been emphasizing, because as a parent, you're basically responsible for what your child eats
Yeah.
because you do the shopping. You decide on how will the food be cooked. So are we going to steam, to boil, to oven bake, or we want to deep fry and shallow fry all the time in the house? You understand? And what ingredients are we actually adding to the type of food that we are cooking in the house? Because it's both quality and quantity. And how much are we actually serving, you know? Because if you do not teach your children to eat the right type of food in the right quality and quantity, and also teach them moderation, to know that my child will come and cry, I want a sweet or a chocolate. And they're like, not today, let's keep it for your birthday, okay? Maybe have important days in the house that you celebrate, like maybe it's a feast day, we can have a bit of cake, but not cake every weekend or ice cream every weekend. You understand? Those disciplines that we build around food, and healthy disciplines. You're not being restrictive, but you're telling children discipline, okay? You can't have everything you want all the time. Otherwise, you lack self-control in also other areas of your life. So I think for the parents to understand that we have a big role to play in childhood obesity, helping our children to live healthy have a healthy weight, and also prevent the consequences. So you had earlier started diving into the consequences of childhood obesity. And I know you've talked a bit about diabetes, because some people get type 2 diabetes, and which is really more of a lifestyle. It's being sedentary, it is how you eat. It also talks a bit about hypertension, cardiovascular illnesses. I know people who have actually ended up with hypertension as early as 20, and then ended up having a stroke as early as 30 or 35. Imagine a 30 or 35-year-old, able-bodied Ugandan man getting a stroke and dying.
Yeah.
Okay. You're like the hope of your parents at this point. Probably you are just, you've just started enjoying the success of your work, probably newly married, yet to have your first baby, you've just had your first baby, and then down because hypertension, stroke, and death. Could you delve a bit more into the complications of obesity? Why are we really stressing this topic? Why is it really important for people to understand? Yeah.
True. On a day-to-day basis, because the consequences can be looked at, what is it for me now? And I think most of us look in the near future, tomorrow, now. I want to emphasize that children in this era where they have information and they read about obesity as well and know, oh, being overweight is not good, they fat shame each other.
Yeah.
So it means that I'm not saying the fat shamers should keep it up, but I'm saying you are supposed to help your child have a healthy weight to reduce the likelihood of them being among the people who are being bullied because of their body size.
Yeah.
You could as well argue it out and say those children should behave well, they should stop bullying my child because they're overweight, but you could also work on your child having a normal weight so that they're not fat shamed.
But also, maybe to just cut you short, some children don't even have to be bullied or fat shamed to feel uncomfortable because of their weight.
Yes.
They naturally, just as a person, will feel, they'll put on a dress and suddenly look at themselves and realize, I don't like what I look like. And so
Yes.
they start to feel uncomfortable by just themselves,
And
and
the
the esteem is low.
true. And the boys in their teenagers are also looking at male figures of what they would want to look like as men, masculine. And definitely they're looking, I have a belly. This guy I'm looking up to has a
Has a
flat
six-pack,
tummy.
you
So
know?
it's they're also creating identity around that.
Yeah.
We could argue it out and say, let's create positive role models and also show them the big guys. The big guys could motivate our big boys, but let's talk about the other consequences and know that it's not even just about size, so that you know that your boy is not supposed to be motivated to look a certain way.
That's true. But also, when you talk about getting positive role models, and like we have said here, we are looking at this from a positive perspective.
Yes.
We are not here to body shame people. We're not here to insult you. We are here to help you.
Yes.
I was looking up on the statistics of models who oversized models over the years from the US who had been fronted, and some did it from themselves by themselves. Okay, and they decided, me, I am fronting being big, as people want to say, being big.
Body positivity.
Yeah, body positivity. Most of them have actually died in their early 25, 30 because of the complications they've had, because of the excessive weight. We are not saying it's okay to body shame and it's not okay, but we are saying there are consequences to you carrying that excessive weight around, and we can't run away from them.
Very true. And living alone the day-to-day life, then the next thing that is going to happen is once in a while your child is going to want to play sport, but they cannot do certain sport. Because being heavy in itself, I love to use the analogy of, if your heart is supposed to supply blood, your young heart, since we are speaking about children, is supposed to supply blood to maybe 20 kilo weight. But now you have double that, you're 50 kilos. So it's definitely overworking.
Yeah.
Definitely you will not skip a rope 100 times as an overweight child, while the normal weight person will be able to skip the rope without feeling the damage to their knees. So physical ability, physical health, and the strength that affects the day-to-day habits of these children. You will be at a school and you'll find the overweight children will be walking sluggishly at the back. Not because they are slow, but because definitely they are not able to carry themselves at the speed of their other peers. You look around the physical education, PE, we used to call it PE earlier,
Yes.
exercise sessions, and you will find that the bigger children are sitting on the edges and the smaller ones are playing. So they are not able to physically participate in the activity for a long period of time, but also when they do and they want to, they get tired very fast.
That's true.
So you're actually not only affecting their health in future, but even in the moment, then definitely what you've talked about is ultimately we are seeing diabetes coming closer to the younger ages. We are seeing hypertension coming closer to the younger ages. Similar to your story, the first patient I saw die when I was doing my clinical nutrition internship was a 32-year-old man, and he died because of a heart failure. I remember looking at that lifeless body and thinking, because we had started to have conversations about lifestyle habits, and unfortunately passed because before he recovered so that he can go home and change his habits. I remember looking at this lifeless body and thinking, I am just a few years to that person's age. Like it had not occurred to me that people die that young. Like when you speak of death, you're thinking
70,
it's the old
80.
people who die. But this is a 32-year-old. I was about 24 then. I'm like, this person is almost my age. Like you've said, this person could be my spouse. Imagine a young person dying when they've just got married, like you've said. And all these things, when you really look at his habits, you would really think if he had better healthy eating habits, he was also misusing drugs. There's a number of things that were going wrong. Alcohol, you would actually have saved this life. And if all the other consequences do not speak to a parent, I think loss of a child speaks to a parent. We don't know, but I know that the few parents I've talked to, even when they are 90 and their child of 70 years dies, the pain they feel is immense. And now feeling this pain and looking at that medical report and knowing that your child died from a disease that has modifiable aspects to it. We can't control all these diseases, but there's a lot of evidence that we can control the outcomes. We can control health from a diet and exercise perspective. For example, the stroke that you gave an example of young people getting stroke, there is evidence that even after your first stroke, if you eat healthy, 80% of the time you will prevent the next occurrence of a stroke. 80% reduction. Like
That's high,
you save your life 80% of the time just because you've modified your diet after your first stroke. You know in your practice that commonly when person has a stroke, they have
The
another
risk
and
is
another
higher.
and
Yeah,
another.
for another.
But imagine, I'm just asking you to eat more vegetables, and that can save your life 80% of the time. It's remarkable. It's I really don't know how we can convince people to just modify the entire family's diet. And speaking of the consequences, some people will listen in and argue that, but in my family we are all big. There's a gentleman who told me, my girls are as big as me. We are huge. In our family, we are huge.
It's the environment. You're all doing the same things.
So I say, oh, okay. I came from a point of, let me understand this. So you're huge genetically, you're tall, what? I'm like, also huge size. I'm like, okay, tell me more. Tell me about your habits. Tell me about what you eat. And indeed, it wasn't that it was genetics. It was the family habits were being passed over from person to person to generation.
Imagine.
So over the years, the entire family was big. And I was telling him, look here, you can brag about this because it sounded like a brag that your kids are huge just like you. Clearly, they are yours, but it's the habits. It's the habits. And lucky for us is we went in and modified the habits in this household, and I can report that we are now getting to a point of, oh, we weren't actually genetically big. It was our habits. And I believe that can happen to every household.
Yeah, which is quite amazing. And I think you're doing quite amazing work out there. Maybe from a perspective of awareness and advocacy, because I feel like this is a very important topic. And we are in a generation where parents need to be more aware, because we are seeing more and more of childhood obesity and also the young ones coming in with diabetes and hypertension and things like that. Do you also participate, part of your work, do you take part in awareness, advocacy, and how would you advise us to go about something like this? Or how more can we take it up as a country?
I got asked that question recently, so I have and deeply thought about it. It was from a researcher who was trying to understand where if we are going to get to the point of America, for example, where almost 1 in every 2 are obese, like 2 people, 1 is obese. For us, we are still at a point of, I think it's the women. The women have got there in Uganda, in Kampala. The women have got there. 1 in every 2 women are overweight and obese in Kampala. So we are getting there. And these are the mothers of the children we are talking about. So you can't imagine what I'm getting to.
Yes.
And one of the things that is in my mind recently, thinking about that question, is there's also a cultural issue. Because if we have the women getting there faster, it's also partly, and this is in my mind, because we still have a culture of the bigger the woman, the sexier they are.
It is true. When people keep talking about nyash all over social media, and you're thinking that's fat.
Yes.
You know?
So even in this room, I'm sure the men are thinking, why are you talking about our big women? We love them. African women, we love them thick. I want to tell us that there's a difference between thick and fat.
True.
There's a difference between curvaceous and excess fat. And you know when it's fat. Same to your children. You know when your child is fat and they're not just chubby. Why am I bringing in a cultural perception when you ask me about advocacy? I believe that we can't do advocacy on eat healthy and eat healthy, but if we don't solve the cultural perception of a big child is a healthy child. I was telling one of my family members while they were calling one of our young family members chubby and nice. I was like, you're actually putting something in this girl's head that it's okay, and you like that about her being chubby and everything. So when she loses weight, she will feel she's not enough. I think you want to reframe how you're talking to her about her being fat. But I digress. My point here is that on an advocacy standpoint, we need a mindset shift. We need people to stop associating excess weight in children
with looking healthy, being good,
with being well off. Your child having a healthy weight does not mean you don't have money to fatten them. It means you are a responsible parent.
Responsible parent. That's the term.
And it doesn't mean that when your child is big, you're well off. Because we also know that you can actually get big easily on cheap food. So if you're using it as a status symbol, you're wrong. I can fatten a child on very cheap food. So it's no longer a status symbol. So when we dive away from that and then also have the medical professionals, because I come from a point of dietitian, so that's what I do. But how many medical people, and you can answer this with all honesty, have the courage to have a conversation about obesity? I will be at a facility and there'll be like 5 obese children coming in. Each of them is measuring a high weight for their age, a high weight for their height. And you go to the health facility, the nurse who measured or the doctor who saw them, and ask them, I've been there, you didn't refer me any of these cases. They're like, they came for malaria.
But
they came for anemia. They came for anemia is even diet related, I would have seen. They came for something else. The child had fallen. I'm like, in addition to falling, this child is clearly overweight.
That's true.
You let a case walk in and out of a hospital. So why am I calling it a case? Do medical professionals beyond the textbook realize that obesity and overweight is a condition needing expert guidance? In the moment of seeing these children, you go to any dental place around Kampala now, you will see a number of overweight children coming in. And they will come in more to the dental facility because, of course, they're eating more sweets, their teeth are getting more curry than their counterparts who are not eating excess sweets. Are the medical professionals in that facility kickstarting conversations? Are we diagnosing obesity and overweight, or we think it's not a condition? Because it is a condition. So it's actually, in my mind, I have a phrase on my X account that says, healthcare without nutrition is an injustice. In my mind, it's an injustice that a patient, an overweight child is walking into a facility and getting out without being told they're overweight and obese. Leave alone how you actually approach it. Of course, you have to approach it from a calm angle, telling them because of the cultural stereotypes around it. But how does an overweight child walk into a hospital and get out without you telling them about this condition that they have?
And I think for me, what you're speaking is saying that when we see our patients, when we see these children, we need to look at them from a holistic point of view.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not just looking at you as a patient with cancer. Okay, but I'm looking at everything else that is coming with your cancer: psychological, your physical, okay, your spiritual. And so that makes sure that each and every area of your life is targeted, and so we can take care of your health and your nutrition as well.
Very
Yeah.
true. And also because, and just to motivate, because you spoke about advocacy. So my advocacy for me is to the health workers. Please refer these cases.
Yeah.
There is evidence, more than enough evidence, that an obese child, an obese adult as well, is more likely to die from any disease than a normal weight person.
Okay.
If you're doubting it, look at the COVID-19 statistics. Obese people were more in ICUs than normal people.
Because there are some other changes that occur in your body with the obesity that maybe we haven't been able to
Yes.
delve into here.
Yes.
On a biochemical point of view as well.
So it's urgent. It's like walking into the hospital with a wound. It's that urgent. It's a risk factor for so
Yeah.
many things. So you should fix it. So yeah, those are my advocacy points. That's if the people doing country level advocacy,
Yeah.
they should fix the cultural aspect.
Okay.
If they're doing something like Obulamu, we did for HIV, but for obesity, they should approach it from a cultural perspective, changing people's minds around how to perceive a fat child versus a normal weight child. Then from the clinical side, my advocacy is to fellow health workers. Let's treat this as a condition. It's not just the way the person looks. It is a
Yeah.
condition. Diagnose it, take it seriously. Because when you diagnose it, the patient comes to me with the level of seriousness you give them. But you tell them, hey, your child is big, but don't mind, they'll outgrow it. It's what do you mean don't mind?
Yeah, and not necessarily that they'll outgrow it. They may actually get even into adolescence with that excessive weight, and then it comes with other complications. Okay, so thank you very much. We have dealt into also management on quite a deeper level as we were going through all these things. But maybe to just briefly summarize, what are your most important points? What should be our takeaway points on how do we manage childhood obesity? Where do I start? If I have seen my child and I think they may be overweight, okay, how do I start, and what are some of the things that I can implement even as I am working in progress to go and see a specialist like you?
Okay. I'll start from an honest evaluation. 3 days, 3 to 7 days. Get a book, write down every single thing your child is eating. Write it down. Because if you visualize it just in your mind, you may not accept it. Write down every single thing your child eats for 3 days to 7 days. After doing that, evaluate these foods from a point of which foods are excess energy. Because obesity management is a battle against excess energy. So if the child had breakfast, they had lunch, they had dinner, those are 3 meals a day. You can start from a point of evaluating. So we have first made a sort of food diary.
Yeah.
Now we are evaluating where the excess energy is coming from.
Okay.
And in excess energy, we are going to first evaluate the snacks. When you evaluate the snacks, you realize that there are snacks that are giving you excess energy. Remove them. Like the example of the donuts we gave.
Yeah.
The example of the corn snacks with sodas. Remove them. Start from that point. And when you remove them, you can put them maybe a once in a while item so that your child doesn't feel deprived.
Yeah.
So we are first, food diary. Second, evaluating the key sources of energy. It's usually the snacks first, remove them. Second thing that usually will have the biggest source of excess energy. Excess. I'm emphasizing excess. I'm not saying energy is bad. I'm just saying the excess. The other driver of excess in children is typically the drinks. So you want to swap that with something low energy. If they've been taking, let's say, sweetened packaged mango juice, you with a lot of sugar, by the read your food labels, you'll be surprised. Most of these drinks are almost over 10% just sugar.
Yeah.
So you want to swap from the packaged mango juice that has a lot of sugar to making a homemade mango juice. So you're swapping a high energy drink to a lower energy drink. And teach your children to drink water. It's possible. Children can drink water. Most parents are thinking, my child drinking water. Buy your child a water bottle and put water in that bottle. The third thing that you want to evaluate on this food diary that you've made is to ensure that every time you're serving a meal, the meal is prioritizing protein and vegetables. So you have a source of protein, then you have your vegetables, then you add the energy food. Because the energy is the other thing. Since you already have fat stores for this child that they can tap into as a source of energy, it's not a priority to load the meal with energy, but it's a priority to have enough vegetables. It's a priority to have enough protein. Yes.
And I think also the other thing that people don't understand, and a lot of my colleagues keep asking me because I'm really so much into the wellness and I talk a lot about nutrition. People don't understand that carbohydrates are not just starch carbohydrates. Okay. When somebody sees a plate and the plate has French beans, zucchini, mushroom, okay, maybe broccoli, and you put some chicken there, people will ask, where is the carbohydrate? And you're telling people, but things like broccoli, like mushrooms, like zucchini are vegetables, but they have carbohydrates.
Yeah,
Do
they
you
have.
even know that beans have carbohydrates as well as protein? You know,
And you
it's
can also add a fruit on the side for carbohydrate.
yeah, you can have a banana with it, an apple with it. Yes, they are fruits, but also high in carbohydrate as well. So it's not just you eating yams, Irish potato, sweet potato, I don't know, rice. I liked, and I like to really help people visualize this. I want you to walk into a restaurant, okay, and there's a restaurant in Wandegea called Sebanchai. He serves local food. And they ask what you want to eat, and say, mere yona. You've all heard what they say, mere yona. What comes on that plate? Three-quarters of it is there's yam, there's sweet potato, there's Irish potato, there's kalo, there's rice, a small piece of meat like this, and a spoon of greens. That is the Ugandan diet. Basically, three-quarters of our plate is carbohydrate. That's how Ugandans eat. And I think that part of the advocacy that we are going to do is to teach people what a WHO healthy plate looks like. Because WHO has put out a plate and told people, like you said, half of the plate is veggies, okay? Fruits, veggies. And then the other half, you're now going to divide and have your protein. And then you can have another bit of your carbohydrate. That will be a bit of a starch carbohydrate, but not as much as we are eating it. Because rightly, as you're saying, we are taking in so much energy and not being able to burn it. And that's contributing to the excess weight we are seeing in ourselves and our children as well.
Very true.
Okay.
And I think we can also say that to motivate the parent, we're not just asking you to reduce the starchy foods. We are saying reduce the starch and add more protein because your child is growing.
That's true.
And proteins are helping you with your child's growing. So you're not actually losing out. You're making a trade-off that's adding a benefit. Because it's so surprising that in Uganda we still have stunted children, even among the well-to-do. We have, I think we're still at a quarter. One in every 4 children are stunted. Stunting means the child has not grown to their best potential. Their brain, their body, they are not growing to their best potential because of the fact that they're not getting enough protein in their diets. And you can visualize and see why we don't get enough protein. Breakfast, porridge and cassava. Lunch, a plate of mainly starchy food with very little protein. Evening, very little protein. So people are actually protein deprived. So we're just saying, reduce the starch, add more protein because it's beneficial. And we are not asking you to buy exotic food. We are saying use whatever you have, but classify it as the healthy plate model is. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Miss Regina, for this edition on wellness. Thank you so much for telling us about childhood obesity. This has been a very interesting conversation. I personally have added to my knowledge because being a clinician, it's also important to hear from your side as a dietitian and nutritionist. And I've got some ideas on how to help those children in my clinic. I hope you have all found this very helpful. Thank you very much, Regina, for giving us your time and teaching us about childhood obesity, what causes it, how we can manage it, and best of all, how we can avoid and prevent our children from getting obese and thus prevent the complications that come with it. I hope that we all found this very helpful. And if you would like, there are going to be contacts in the link. You can reach out to Regina and her team. And if you want to reach out to my team as well to know more about holistic wellness, you can reach out to us as well. If you have liked what you have heard, please subscribe, like, and share. And please watch out for our next edition on wellness. Till next time, bye-bye.